Hello and welcome to yet another Pro Football Spot Seahawks Google Hangout. This one's going to work as a bit of a draft review. A couple of days out from the end of the draft and the undrafted frenzy at the end of the 7th round as well. So as always, I'm joined by Ken and Ryder. How are we doing, gents?
Doing good.
Good.
Good. How was the rest? Did you enjoy the draft weekend?
As with every year for me.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I did as well. It was interesting. It was an interesting selection from the Seahawks for different reasons, which we'll get into now. So first off, let's just start from where the Seahawks started at 63. They took Frank Clark, defensive end out of Michigan, and as we reacted on Friday night, have your positions changed on the pick, or Ken?
Well, like you, initially I was a little hesitant because of this whole off the field issues, but thinking back on it now, you got to figure that the team has done thorough investigations and vetted this kid and made sure his mentality is right to be a member of the team, and of course, numbers are off the charts. Really good athlete, good explosion, and probably play everywhere along defensive line. Schneider really likes his athletic ability, so it's a good fit. It helps with defensive line depth.
Yeah, definitely. Ryder?
Yeah, he's a guy with a ton of upside. There must have been something that they figured out in their investigation that made them feel secure in taking him this early. I mean, Bruce Irvin was a similar risk, and they took him even earlier in the draft. So I'm guessing that they might feel like they're getting a steal here.
Yeah, I think that was the main thing, because you watch Frank Clark and it's quite impressive because he looks like he could do it from a so-called Leo position and on the outside, and then also like Michael Bennett, he can work inside as well. He doesn't just set the edge; he breaks it down and breaks up a play. So on field is quite impressive. I listened to Schneider earlier today on Brock and Salk on ESPN Seattle, and he said they dug in to the people around him. They did. I think he said it was the most research that they've ever done on a player they've picked. But they are sure they would have closed the door, I think is what the phrasing he used, if they didn't think if they thought he was guilty, and they used the example of the Greg Cardi talk in the off season where they looked into it, they opened the door, what they found made them closer. It's on Greg Hardy, so I don't think he was ever charged. Was it? Prove it was just him putting himself in a bad situation. But it's a pretty big. Just the most people be way with 60. I think a few days later, it's still not a pick I was on board with because of all the off-field, especially the stance Carroll and everyone took after the Ray Rice incidents last year. But if he keeps his nose clean off the field while in Seattle and does what they seem to think he'd be able to do on the field, I'm all for it, if not a little hesitant at first.
And he was one of the 3 guys that Schneider and Carroll were like, these are guys that we want to make sure we get. So they'd have to be pretty certain.
Yeah, and I think it was 2012. I think it was they had like 4 or 5 guys who they wanted in the first round, and it was like Kuechly and Barron as well, and then the other one was Irvin, who they won in the first round. So it's interesting. Is it like you said? That is an interesting point because they said 2 of the 3. We'll get on to the other one in a minute. But who do you think the third one would be? Wild guesses.
I would have thought it was Glowinski because he was such a good fit, but apparently
Well, apparently the second one was Tyler Lockett. The third one they didn't get, and quoting Schneider, he was bummed about it. You'd have to think it might have been Morse or maybe Marpet.
Yeah, those are two good picks.
Because I think Tampa traded up ahead of us, didn't they? And they took Marpet at like 60 or 61. So, but yeah. Moving on, the 69th pick was Tyler Lockett at Kansas State. And Schneider called him the best kick returner in the country. We give up 4 picks for him. First off, Ryder, was it a price worth paying, do you think?
If he can bring an impact on offense, especially an immediate one, it absolutely was worth it. But if he's just going to be a special teams guy, I think we were giving up too much for that. Unless he's like Devin Hester level.
Yeah. Ken?
At first, no, it seems like a lot, but I think it's actually just enough because this is a guy who was like the only standout on that Kansas State team. And so you would think that defenses would have a way to shut him completely down, and yet he goes up every single week and is averaging 15 yards a catch. So this guy's got to be explosive, good route runner, and able to get open every single down. So I think there's a huge upside offensively as well as his kick return game.
Yeah, I agree. I think obviously looking at it when it first come through, you look at the numbers and the amount of picks they give up, but there was no way this team was going to pick 11 players in this draft. The trade was always coming. 8 players is what they ended up with. It seems about right for the depth and needs, supposed needs and holes they needed to patch up. And Lockett, like you say, Kansas State had very little, and the little they had, he was it pretty much. The kick return 2014 is kick return because as good before. It haunted us a bit after obviously Baldwin coughed up a fumble pretty early on, and so yeah, I think Lockett. I think he was on KJR earlier, and he was saying they're talking about him playing the slot and Kersey's spot as well a little bit. So they still need to find and have that outside guy, you would think. But I think Lockett will be. He has. Do you think he has an argument to be 1-2 years down the line that he'll be the best receiver on this team?
I think the upside is definitely there. It's kind of a bad situation for him because Doug Baldwin is so good in the slot that he's kind of already in a backseat kind of role. But a few years, guys leave for better contracts elsewhere. He could definitely be a star.
I would say the same thing. He has a ability to become the next Golden Tate. Just a guy who makes a lot of plays, and I mean, especially if Baldwin and Kearse are gone, he'll have more opportunities. But he could also potentially serve a role just to just help open things up for guys like Kevin Norwood, who could be good in a year or two.
Yeah, well, I saw a few people have compared Lockett to Antonio Brown, the Steeler round pick. That if he could bring what he brings to the Steelers to Seattle with the running game, obviously Jim Bellman inside of him and Baldwin and Kearse and Norwood, Richardson, Chris Hughes as well, who they seem to be quite high on. Yeah, I think if he even gets anywhere near the rafters of the ceiling that Antonio Brown is aiming to reach, it'll be pretty fun to watch, and also worth the cost that they give up.
Absolutely.
Moving on. Yeah. Moving on. Terry Paul at San Diego State. Is that right? San Diego State.
Mm-hmm.
Was the third pick, the fourth round pick at the end of the fourth round. Any thoughts on him? First off, did you watch him before the draft? And if you did, what were your thoughts on him before the Seahawks selected him? Either of you.
Well, who's got first?
Ken.
All 10 of them? Yeah, I hadn't seen a ton of them from what I did. He seemed pretty decent athletically. I think the big thing here is that he can play all 5 positions on the offensive line. He can be that swing guy. If he doesn't end up, taking Carpenter's spot at left guard, he can be wherever Tom Cable needs him to be. And Cable's pretty high on that versatility that he brings to the game. So I think that's the reason we went out and got this guy. Pretty good size, good length. Your prototypical offensive lineman in the 4th round. I think he should be a solid contributor and at least be good competition for everyone else trying to have a spot.
Ryder?
Yeah, well, he's definitely a Tom Cable type of guy. He presents the necessary versatility to be on the Seahawks offensive line. I mean, at this point, if you aren't versatile, probably not going to make it onto the roster for Seattle, especially at offensive line. But he has some nice athletic ability, but of course he has kind of short arms, so that's a little bit of a concern. But I mean, move him inside to guard, and that shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I watched a little bit of him. Actually, the NFL UK mock I was involved with, I took him the end of the 6th, I think, or maybe even with the Percy Harvin pick, I took him. So it was someone who was on my radar. I think he was one of the visits to the VMAC as well. Mm-hmm. So they obviously had an interest in him. And like you said, Ryder, he's a Tom Cable guy, as is the next guy they took as well. So versatility is like the buzzword, and it says a lot for how the relationship between Schneider, Carroll, Cable, and how it's ingrained in the offense. It seems a lot more important and at the 4 compared to what Bevel wants. Bevel just kind of gets the toys and is told, like, you make him do this, da 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 da. But when Cable has a say, like he does, especially in Sokoli later on in the round, the draft, it's pretty cool. So yeah, on Paul's play, the bit I watched, he looks like a Seahawk guard. He has the movement, the agility, and like as we said a minute ago, the versatility. So it was probably a little early for me, but like your 4th round pick, you probably couldn't wait much longer. So it was a pick it was a good way to start Saturday evening, I think. 4 picks later was the second guard, Mark Glowinski out of West Virginia. Any thoughts on him?
Ryder first.
Yeah, sorry.
He's kind of a similar player, but I mean, if he was that second guy who Carolyn Schneider really wanted, I mean, it's good that we got him. That probably means that there's something in there that a lot of scouts missed, and he might end up being a really good player. But I mean, he seems pretty raw to me, at least. Yeah.
I think he is less finely tuned than probably what Paul is coming into the league as. I think that's probably a good point. But you watch West Virginia. I think in our mock we did last Monday, I think I had us taking the other one, Quinton, Spain. So I think it was either or. I think that's what I said. So to come out, I think the reaction on our message thread said it all. I think we all reacted with glow, capitalised, and exclamation points. So it's a good pick. It's a nice pick, and he's a Seahawks guard for me. Ken?
I really like this pick. He's a little bit leaner, a little bit more athletic than Poole. They pulled him a lot at guard in college, so that movie, especially if we're going to have, as much stretch runs as we like to have. Cable likes his hand placement, ability to stay in front of blockers. The question about him getting to the second level is up in the air. I think that he'll be coachable for sure. But quite a gym rat too. He's only going to get stronger the longer he's with Seattle. So he's going to be an absolute tank. And then, of course, if we don't give Sweezy an extension at right guard, he's kind of like a mirror for Sweezy. So I really like him.
Yeah, he is. Like, athletically, I think he comps out quite well to Sweezy as well. So it's sorry, Ryder.
Well, it's good to hear that he's a gym rat and coachable, because something with James Carpenter was that his work ethic wasn't always there. You could tell just with he wasn't always in super great condition. He was injured more often than ideal. So maybe it'll be less of an issue with Glowinski.
Well, I think that's the main issue they've got with Alvin Bailey, isn't it? And I think it's the main issue they had with Bowie last year. I think it's their own personal conditioning work isn't what they desire, probably, especially as driven as Pete Carroll tries to drive the team, like the competitive edge he always has it on it. I think Carpenter, Bowie, and Bailey possibly all fall short of it, despite the skill set matching what they do. Is if you don't work to the desired level off the field or in your own, like in between camps and the season and things, then you're not going to stick around very long. So yeah, it is something which it seems to be a running theme in this draft, particularly, especially when you hear them talk and you hear what people who watched them play more than probably we did say about them. The common theme is always competitiveness, or his competitor, he competes, da. It's come up in this draft a lot quicker and a lot more than it probably did in the last two draft classes, I'll probably say. Do you agree, Ken?
Yeah, definitely. And especially since he's such a good competitor, I mean, the Seahawks aren't going to devote a ton of 53-man spots to offensive line. So if he's going to come out and compete to the best visibility, it's going to make everyone else around him better and hopefully earn him a solid position on the depth chart.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The next pick, we're into the 5th round now, and it was someone who had averted my gaze a little bit, although he seems to match up for the most part athletically, was Ty Smith out of Towson. Ryder, what were your thoughts on this pick?
Well, he seems kind of like he's got the height that the Seahawks usually want in their defensive backs, but he is a little bit light. He doesn't necessarily look the part bulk-wise, but in the NFL type of strength program, he's probably going to be putting on some weight. My guess is he'll end up being somewhere around 205, 210 when he's all filled out. Yeah. And at that point, he'll be a better physical matchup, and hopefully it sounds like he has the attitude to be in the Legion of Boom, but not quite the ability to hold up yet.
Yeah, I think I watched a few clips of them after they chosen because I had to write about it. I didn't really know the name or anything. I asked around, and it was not many people saw the fit. And then you listen to Schneider and Carroll, and they rave about the fit. I think Schneider says he's got a comp for him, which he doesn't want to mention because people think he's crazy. But there's a highlight of him making, which Schneider mentioned, and someone's found it. It's he closes in on the ball. He has the pass breakup, but the pass breakup is deflected to another receiver, and Smith gets up, tackles him, and forces the fumble, and nearly gets the fumble recovery as well. So if he does that, I mean, it is pretty impressive. He's like a road runner at that point. He plows through the first receiver, flies up, and then plows through the second receiver, coughing the ball up. And it's all about the ball in Seattle, as we all know. So he doesn't fit the mold of some of the other cornerbacks in this class, which is probably why I missed my attention. I missed him a little bit. But he seems, especially this season, I think he's. Do you think he's going to be the slot cornerback to start with, or do you think he'll be playing outside? Ken?
They'll probably start him out at nickel because he kind of looks like Jeremy Lane a little bit. But I think the idea is that since he's quick and has long arms, they'll try and ideally move him outside just to see how he could be as a press corner.
Yeah, Ryder?
Yeah, I think at first they'll probably just have him in and nickel and probably dime packages. It'll be a while before we start seeing him move up, just because he's got to go through Marcus Burley, a couple other guys. I don't see him starting on the outside this year just because we just signed Kerry Williams to $18 million contract. But down the road, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up moving outside and was the next LOB steal.
Yeah, and he's in the 5th round. I mean, I think it must be double figures the amount of defensive backs the Seahawks have taken in the 5th round alone in the Pete Carroll and Schneider. So it is. I mean, like you say with Kerry Williams, I think it could work out as a 1-year deal. I think he's guaranteed, and his cap hit shrinks in the 2nd and 3rd year of that deal. So if Ty Smith works out, if Burley sticks around and improves, not improves, but becomes more of a factor, and obviously if Tharold Simon gets over his late season struggles, then I think Williams could be a one and done, I think, in Seattle. If Smith, obviously with other contributing factors playing into the bargain here, but yeah, it's a pick I didn't really know, and looking in and obviously listening to what people say about him, it makes a bit of sense because it was a need in the slot quarterback with Jeremy Lane being pretty broken after the Super Bowl. So yeah, the next one was probably one of the more interesting picks. Watchum, is that if I said that right? Defensive end out of Oregon State, the long defensive end. His arms go on for days. Ryder, what were your initial thoughts and your thoughts 2 days later on this pick?
Yeah, well, he was originally a receiver, and part of that was just because of his size and his length. But he never really produced a lot, so it's a pure upside pick. They'll try him out wherever they can. My guess is they'll keep him where he is on the defense. But it is late in the draft, but technically it could be considered a boom or bust type of selection.
Yeah, I think that's one where they get him in the building and work, not put him together, but I think it's where they work on him in the building with Averill and Bennett, and kind of similar to, you probably expect a similar progression to what Irvin's done year on year, I think, with Glatchum. Ken, your thoughts?
Yeah, Ryder, that's pretty fair. Since he's only had time at defensive end for 1 year, it's hard to see what he's going to actually do. He definitely needs to bulk up a little more, sitting only at 245. But like Stuart said, arms go on for days. That's really John Schneider's ideal. I like that he's a former receiver because he should have no problem dropping back into coverage and getting a few pass deflections. Fluid hips too, which helps as a receiver, obviously. Just be able to turn on a dime. But he is a definite project. Good motor off the line, plays really relentless. He was a track stud at Oregon State too. So I think that's what really directed Schneider towards this kid. So it'll be a couple years before we really see what he can do. But again, it's just adding depth to defensive line / linebacker wherever they want him, really.
Yeah. So if he sees the field in 2015. This is to both of you. Ken, you first. Where would you be expecting to see him line up? With his end opposite Averill, or do you think he could be like Spal Bruce, maybe for a snap here and there at Sam a little bit?
Actually, I could see him on a goal line package, perhaps, kind of a sneaky little tight end, because he has that receiver experience. Otherwise, just a sub package on the 4-3 defensive end. Probably won't see a ton of time, though. I'm not really envisioning him being a day one contributor.
Ryder?
Yeah, I would say he's probably he's a practice squad candidate at this point. I mean it's not a great place to start, but I mean he needs the coaching, and that'll probably keep him healthier and just take the pressure off of him in general.
Yeah, I mean, there's not many teams where, not an expectation, but there wouldn't be a surprise if a sixth round rookie made an impact, would there? Obviously after Sherman and everyone. It's not as much as a supply is in other teams. Moving on, next pick was my told you so moment. Christian Sokoli out of Buffalo, defensive lineman in Buffalo in the 3-4, which probably didn't really fit what he can do on the defensive line. But it sounds like he's going to, at the start anyway, be the Sweezy of the draft and play a little centre. Any thoughts on this pick and the transition they're going to make with him, Ryder?
Well, it's worked before. I don't see why not. He's got the ideal size for the position, right?
Mm. And he is an absolute athlete.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. Ken?
Yeah, I was following Zach Whitman's tweets the day of, and at first, when the selection came in, I immediately thought of you, Stuart, because you threw in his name during our mock draft, and I'd never heard of the dude before. So kudos to you. But he said, based on his Spark database, that Sokoli is like the only guy to compare really, really well with J.J. Watt, which is incredible. So we're going to try and move him to guard, but I would really love seeing what he can do on defensive line if he's just like J.J. Watt with all the measurables.
Yeah, well, I think that site, the Sunday night game, Will Tukuafu saw like 10 snaps on the defensive line as well as playing fullback. So maybe, obviously he's got a lot to learn on the early line, so maybe not this year, but down the line, because someone with that makeup and that skill set, you don't really want to restrict him to one position and one role, really, do you? So it would be interesting to watch. It'd be interesting competition to watch with him and Patrick Lewis and Jean-Pierre. So, but with Aaron Donald on the other side in week 1, it would be it's pretty scary to think that a 6th-round defensive lineman rookie will be going up against the reigning defensive rookie, the rookie of the year. But stranger things have happened. I guess they started squeezing against Darnell Dockett, didn't they? So.
Well, it's not just Aaron Donald. It's also Nick Fairley too now.
That's true, yeah, and Brockers obviously is probably. But yeah, it's a pick which I don't know if you've listened to testing, and Whitman screams when the pick is made, when the pick is announced. So that was pretty cool, and I know he's the one who I watched Sokoli, then I saw his tweets about him being a possible convert. So yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting pick. It's at the end of the 6th round. It probably doesn't matter too much. There's not much expectation for him to do much as a 6th rounder. So with them drafting Sokoli to play centre or guard, do you see them? What chance do you give him beating out Lewis and Jean-Pierre?
It's a tough call. I've never really been a fan of Lewis. Jean-Pierre is pretty steady in what he can do, but he's not the future. Pretty manageable contract, of course, what we just gave him this offseason. So if he, this kid Sokoli can, jump 38 inches. I mean, he's a tremendous athlete, around 300 pounds, and I really like him. I think he could actually beat out these guys who are more in tune to what the position is. So yeah. I'm gonna pull for him.
Yeah, Ryder? Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Not huge on Patrick Lewis, Lemuel Jean-Pierre. He works. He's not great. But I think for the time being, he's probably gonna hold down a starting spot. But Sokoli he's an interesting guy. I think I don't know, just he'd be good. If he pans out, definitely has way more upside than some of the other guys. But there are a lot of spots right now after some of the guys we just lost, so there's always a chance.
Yeah, well, I think I'll probably put Lewis as the clubhouse leader at the position at the minute because I mean, he's stuck around for one, and Jean-Pierre's been in and out of the building the last couple of years. But Lewis, they seem quite high on him, so it'd be interesting to see the progression he makes with another year in a cable system. But like you, Ken, I am pulling for Sakari to be a starter. If not at centre, then somewhere on the 53 and then the 22, I suppose it would be. But yeah, it's a fun pick. I think that's the main thing. The final pick was Ryan Murphy, the cornerback out of the safety out of Oregon State. Now this is another one like Smith, who much of, but has since. He just looks like a steady football player. He doesn't seem to be too like exceptional. He just seems like a steady football player who's going to contribute. It seems our first on special teams. So, Ryder, what were your thoughts on the pick, and did you get to watch him at all?
Yeah, well, his spark rating was apparently the second best for all the safeties in the draft. So he's a guy with a ton of upside. I mean, that's who you take in the 7th round. I was advocating for a guy to be replaced for Jerron Johnson's spot, and maybe they found him with this guy. He'll have to probably beat out Dion Bailey, who was on the practice squad last year, who I also really like. I thought getting him as an undrafted free agent, watching him in the preseason was pretty cool, but it's going to be a bit of a battle for him.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, he's probably true for me. I mentioned on his most of the draft kid special as well. Team's going to be
Have I been cued?
I think so.
and he makes the team. What were your thoughts? She seems to be a lot on the pick of Ken. What were your thoughts on the pick?
Well, first, I apologize for any connection issues that are happening on my end. Campus Wi-Fi, but pretty steady guy. I like the word that you used earlier, steady. 70 tackles a year, basically, 38 game starter. What Schneider really saw was at Oregon State they'd line him up in the nickel area, kind of what we do with Cam Chancellor, and they really like the comparison there. So we could move him close to line, basically be Cam's backup. Although at the same time, you know, with that safety position opened up, it makes me sad because I'm a big Eric Pinkins fan still. I'd really like to see him convert to safety. And, you know, if Ryan Murphy beats it out, good for him, but it also makes me sad about Pinkins. But it's a solid pick, you know, just solidifying the secondary.
It was a like I think like mentioned rather no longer here, and Pinkins and Dion Bailey still unknown. It was a position, a spot on the roster which needed to be filled, and it looks like they may have filled it. If not with Bailey and Pinkins last year, they have probably with Murphy, who has a really interesting family tree because he's cousins with Lynch, Marshall and Lynch, Josh Johnson, and apparently
Well, looks like we just lost Stuart.
Well, hopefully he's back here in a bit. So Eric Pinkins, what are you thinking his chances for the roster this year are?
It doesn't look good. You know, the initial intent was to make him like the next Brandon Browner at cornerback, and he was just getting beat out in practice by guys like Paul Richardson who are just outrunning him, and it just didn't look good. And then the whole like top of his foot injury, I forget what the technical term was, but non-football related injury knocked him out the entire year, and it's just a lot of learning time that is now gone. And so now with Deion Bailey, like you said, this kid Ryan Murphy, now it looks really tough. I'm hoping we can keep him on the practice squad because he is a versatile guy with San Diego State system that he's a product of. So I'd really like to see what he can do. He has fantastic size for the secondary, which is really valuable. So my fingers are crossed, but it looks pretty bleak.
Well, I was actually a bigger fan of Deion Bailey. Maybe, I mean, he was a bigger name coming out, and we've actually had more success with smaller name guys, it seems like, outside of Earl Thomas, of course. But Bailey, he looked really good in the preseason for me, although had a few mental errors. I think he missed some tackles too, but really, it's a wide open spot for me, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a bit of a learning curve with Bailey, but I do like what he showed as well.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
I'm hearing nothing.
Just getting little bits here.
Just a frozen face. Stuart Court. And he's gone again.
Gone again.
Our fearless leader. Have you taken a look at this undrafted free agent class? Because a couple of names, have caught my attention, but I haven't really seen a lot of these kids.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of them either, but the guy I'm most familiar with, just because I'm here in Seattle and watch the Washington Huskies, is Michael Hartfigson, the tight end. He's more of the he's not so much of a receiver as he is a blocker from what I've seen. He was kind of overshadowed by Austin Safarian-Jenkins, of course.
Right.
And didn't seem like he had a huge impact once he did have the opportunity with Jenkins gone.
Okay. Yeah, obviously I haven't heard a lot about him. I know Torrey Slater's been a name connected to the Seahawks for a while now. I think he could be a guy that forces out an incumbent. Maybe he'll fight it out with like a DeMarcus Dobbs to get a roster spot. So that's probably a name that I'm going to be looking at. And then of course, just such a great story with the former Green Beret, 34-year-old Nate Boyer at long snapper. Of course, the need's not really there because we already got Clint Gresham to a new deal, but it's hard not to overlook a good story.
Yeah, it'll be interesting just because every year there's at least one or two guys in from at least the UDFA class, and then another couple that are from the late round picks that usually make they end up being kind of a surprise standout in the OTAs, training camp, and preseason. Trying to think of who it was a couple years ago. Was a promising pass rusher, but he ended up not making it. But people I think he had 2 or 3 sacks in one of the preseason games, and it's a shame he didn't develop the way it looked like he was.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there are a number of undrafted guys here, but like the spots just aren't going to be there for a bunch of these guys, especially with 8 draft picks already. I mean, thankfully for us, Seattle's already a pretty solid team, with their roster. So there's not a lot of room of need,
Mm-hmm. I'd say just that offensive line is probably where the most jobs are going to be in danger. But that and possibly backup linebacker.
Because of Malcolm Smith?
Yeah, he's with him gone, and let's see, who do we have right now? I think, do we have Corey Toomer?
I think Toomer's gone because he could never. First of all, he could stay healthy, and then second of all, he didn't impress. He didn't impress enough in training camp.
Then it'll be Mike Morgan and
we got to keep him.
KPL.
Yeah, absolutely. Morgan is such an asset on special teams, though.
Definitely. So that leaves at least a couple open spots there, I'm thinking.
So I know Stuart is trying to make his way in and out of this conversation. As if on cue. Stuart, can you hear us? No? It's a bummer.
Maybe a few more seconds.
Trying to see if he's messaging us on Twitter, but I haven't caught anything yet.
Oh, it's gone again.
In and out. I'll keep the message tab open in case he gets a hold of us.
Okay.
So we might have to end it early. I know Stuart was probably going to mention wide receiver Austin Hill of Arizona, who's one of our pickups. And then you mentioned offensive line, Jesse Davis of Idaho could be a sleeper. But other than that, nothing really steps out. A couple of running backs, I guess, which is interesting because we already have, Michael Turbin and Lynch plus Demetrius Bronson.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like we usually, well, maybe not usually, but in the past we have had 4 running backs, whereas more of a committee. I don't know if that's going to be the case this year or next year, but it may be. I guess it depends on how Lynch is running, but it seems like he's doing just fine after last year, still just running everybody over.
It was great, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm amazed that he just keeps going in a way I haven't seen in quite a while.
He's such a gift because running backs, you just don't see that kind of talent nowadays. Maybe now with Gurley and Gordon, they might right the ship, but he's just one of those rare guys where it's a gift to have for such a long time, especially now that he's on the age of like the traditional decline, and you just haven't really seen it yet.
Yeah, I think it's like 31 is when the most noticeable decline starts to happen. So he's a couple years away from that, but just with his physical running style, it'll be interesting to see how much longer he can go. But if he finishes out his contract and career really strong, what do you think of him as a possible Hall of Fame candidate?
Oh, Lynch? Oh, yeah, I'd love it for him to be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, especially just, with Adrian Peterson not keeping his nose to the grindstone, not keeping his nose clean, with all that stuff, it's kind of almost ixnayed for him. But Lynch, first things for him, at least recently, are just not really talking to the media that much, which, shouldn't be a deciding factor at all. But just looking at the numbers that he's put up over the years and just how dependable he's been for the run first offense that we've got here, it should be a clear indicator, and however long.
I feel like you don't even really need to look that closely at the numbers. Just put on some of his film, and I mean, he stands out so quickly. He doesn't have like the overwhelming speed like a lot of guys tend to today. He's not the take it all the way sort of guy. He's a pretty steady guy, and he's just he keeps going. It's just so much fun to watch.
Stuart's back. Welcome back, sir.
Hello. What have I missed?
We talked a little bit about undrafted free agents. We haven't really caught up on a bunch of them yet, but we were just discussing running backs.
Yeah, well, they got one, didn't they? Rod Smith, the old Buckeye.
Yeah, and Thomas Rawls of CMU, who kind of looks more like a fullback, but still listed as a running back.
Yeah, well, there's the one I'm most intrigued by. And I think actually, if he's healthy now, I think it's Austin Hill, the Arizona wide receiver. His size and how he was in 2012, I think it was, or maybe 13 before he got injured, was really, really impressive. He was probably, if he had carried that on, we're probably talking second, third, fourth round pick. But his injuries kind of derailed him a little bit at Arizona, so it'd be interesting to see what the NFL conditioning can do, because he looks a bit Jermaine Kearse-esque, I think, and with Jermaine Kearse's contract situation still being a bit cloudy because he hasn't signed his tender, I think that's the name I'm going to be watching the most between now and the end of training camp.
You think, other than injuries, he's got a higher ceiling than Kearse?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think Kearse is pretty close to his ceiling, I think, to be honest. But Austin Hill, I think it's 2012. If you go back and watch some of the things he was doing for Arizona there before he got injured, it's impressive. It really is impressive. And we're talking about Lockett earlier, and that's probably sort of range we could have been talking about with Hill if the injuries. Obviously, it's a massive if because it happened, but right. The injuries did derail him a little bit, and he seemed to have lost not a step, but there was something missing from after. Obviously, post-injury, he's probably a little bit like a bit more reserved in how he goes about it. But get him in the NFL, get him in the building in Seattle, and he will be a name I'll be looking to see if he catches on. If not in Seattle, somewhere else in the league, because like you probably said, the available numbers are pretty thin on the ground in Seattle.
For sure, I'll have to keep an eye on him as well.
Yeah. Also, there is one other player. I know there was another Norfolk State guy who you wanted us to draft, Ken.
Yeah.
But I think he ended up in San Francisco, I believe. It's Keenan Lambert, the strong safety. Now, I haven't watched any of Keenan Lambert's tape, but apparently his half-brother is Cam Chancellor.
Is he really?
Apparently, Cam Chancellor tweeted. Cam Chancellor was where the announcement came from. He tweeted that he was coming to Seattle. So I don't know if he was. I think he was undrafted signing, or it might have been a camp body, like a rookie signing. But Keenan Lambert, Norfolk State, strong safety as well. So that could be interesting on the depth chart.
Little half brother duking it out for the depth chart.
Yeah. I mean, that's gonna be maybe that it could help him in some way. Maybe like with Murphy being related to Lynch, it could be something that helps him bring him in a little bit. Not obviously make the team, but help him bring him along a little bit, because there's few people better to talk to than Cam Chancellor about playing the position.
Yeah, and just transitioning into the NFL in general.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, probably a conversation they've already had along the process that he's probably been in the last few months. So, so which names were you talking about? Sorry to.
Well.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryder.
Yeah, I mentioned Michael Parkinson, tight end out of Washington. What do you know about him?
Not a lot, to be honest. It's a name I haven't noted down as one of the players they signed, so it's not someone I've looked into, to be honest. Obviously, don't remember much of him.
He's a guy who he kind of got overshadowed by Austin Seferian-Jenkins, but he seems more like he'd fill in a blocking style role. He never really shined too much as a receiver, even with ASJ out of the picture. I mean, potentially he could also fit as a fullback, but it sounds like Derek Coleman might be here for the long haul.
Yeah, well, the tight end position, like as we said before, is a position where all they need really is someone who's going to run block. It's like the extra offensive lineman. Gary Gilliam could be the man, the clubhouse leader again in that position. So yeah, it's a name which is not on my list, but it's someone I have to go and check out, I think. Talking of Huskies, they did sign today as a rookie minicamp invitee Jesse Carrier, the running back. What are your thoughts on him?
I didn't know that they signed him, but early in his career, he looked like he was going to be great. He actually beat out Bishop Sankey for the starting job a couple years ago, or probably 3 years ago. But then he got injured. I think it was like his second ACL tear, and when he came back, he didn't have that same level of explosiveness and agility that he really had before. And I don't know if he needed more separation from the injury before he got back to it, or if it's just plain gone. But before he suffered those injuries, he looked really, really promising.
Yeah, I think that's the same with Austin Hill as well. As if he can recapture what he had, because there's a reason he's gone undrafted his last couple of years. His post-injury play has not probably merited it, but he's definitely got the size. He's got the hands as well to catch on. So yeah, with the running back, it was someone who seemed to. I mean, he didn't really take it by the scruff of the neck, really, did he? In 2014. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but yeah, it's someone like that who might catch on and will be sitting there in 6 months raving about him. But at the minute, I think he's probably just a local body to have for the weekend at first. There is one other name. I mentioned him to Ken before we got started here. Torrey Slater, defensive end, West Georgia. We were talking earlier about Guacham's length, and this guy is built similarly. He's massive. He is yoked, I think the phrase is. And again, he's another name I'll be keeping an eye on. I watched a little bit of him because he was a VMAC visit, so I went and tried to dig up any little flash of highlight I could. And he's got the explosion. He's got probably the use of the hands. Probably needs to be more consistent. But like Austin Hill. I think him and Hill are the two I'm probably most excited about the undrafted guys they picked up.
Yeah, that's good. I was mentioning to Ryder earlier that the Seahawks had interest in him, and I was thinking if he impresses enough, he could oust a guy like DeMarcus Dobbs.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about youth, really. I mean, it's give youth a chance, really, isn't it, with Seattle, because they are still going to be one of the youngest teams in the league. Like Frank Clark is only 21, Sakoli's 23, I think 22, Smith's 22, 23. So they've got players who are young who are going to contribute probably this year and not in 2016 for definite probably. So Slater is someone who will be named to watch. What if I'm not selecting or picking up a quarterback? Ken.
I'm not really disposed. I mean, I'm always thinking, B.J. Daniels is sitting there in the back, maybe try him out at wide receiver, but he'll still have the quarterback skills. And ideally, you'd like to bring Tavares back just because he knows the system so well. But looking at this quarterback class, for only a couple who were really out in the Seahawks would even consider going at the quarterback position because we had so many needs elsewhere. I don't see it as a big need to fill.
Ryder?
Yeah, well, once they traded those picks away, I don't think there was a chance that they were going to take a quarterback. But I would say at this point, it looks like B.J. Daniels is probably going to be the guy next year, unless Tarvis Jackson just kind of finally, I guess, accepts what we're offering, or it's going to be somebody's going to have to budge at some point if this deal is going to happen.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of teams jumping all over Jackson to get his services. So
No, I think he took one visit, so he's either considering his future or the Seahawks aren't talking to him until they get other business sorted. But again, going back to Schneider on 7:10 earlier, the line he used, this is not word for word what he said, but the line he sort of used was on about the quarterbacks, none lasted to fit our way. So that's either someone like, I don't know, someone late rounds was drafted, or by the time they got round to being drafted, teams had already picked up the quarterbacks they wanted. Because I think Shane Carden is he gone to Dallas? I mean, so. He would have been. I think he'd have been an interesting project to stash away somewhere for a couple of years. But I think that's a position which will, as soon as we know the next step Tavares Jackson's taking, because there's no veteran quarterbacks out there really who can come in and you'd be okay. Because if Tavares Jackson comes back, the Seahawks again probably have one of the top 1, 2, maybe 3 backup quarterbacks in the league, don't they? So. Would you agree with that, Ryder?
I think it can only be said that he's one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league if he's in our system, because he's really a system quarterback. I don't know that he'd work quite as well outside of this team, but on this team, he knows the playbook, he knows the players, he knows the just general attitude of the team, and I think that's what would make him one of the top backup QBs.
Yeah, that's probably a fair point with the system, because he was with Bevel as well in Minnesota, wasn't he? Ken, what do you think is?
I completely agree with Ryder. I mean, just thinking about backup quarterbacks in the league, I mean, it's the guys who have the most experience in the current systems. Like, the Packers have had Matt Flynn and Scott Tolzien for the past few years, and so they'd be comfortable if, God forbid, Aaron Rodgers got hurt to bring them in. And it's the same thing here with Jackson. It's just, if you're comfortable enough with them, then you should be pretty confident. Beyond Jackson, it's up in the air here in Seattle, but absolutely, I agree with Ryder.
Yeah. I thought that's probably it's a point probably I hadn't really thought about much. When Jackson comes in, it doesn't really miss a step, I don't think, which is rare for most backup quarterbacks in the league. Going back to the undrafted players they picked up, the one who's grabbed the most headlines was the long snapper, wasn't it? But first off, do you think there's any chance he makes the team? And second off, what were your thoughts on the story around Nate Boyer signing? Ryder.
Yeah. Well, it's a good story, and of course you want to pull for him. But I mean, we have Clint Gresham, who's a really good long snapper. So I don't know that there's a fit for him right now. Maybe we give him a chance to showcase his skill. Maybe he gets picked up by another team. But I don't know that there's a place for him in Seattle.
Ken?
Yeah, I agree with Ryder, because we already committed money to Gresham. He's been our guy. Of course, you honor the guy for his several tours in RAC and being a former Green Beret. It's a heck of a story, and what he's done for our country over here. But like Ryder said, there's not really a fit for him. I like the idea of him being able to audition for someone else, but here it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So do you not see a way where he latches on at a different position? Because I know Gresham come into the league. I think he come in as a linebacker. I think so. Do you see him purely as a long snapper? So that's how he's going to make his bread. Or do you think he has position? I doubt he has position history apart from long snapper, does he?
No, not that I've been able to get attention of. So
no. What are your thoughts on the? We touched on it briefly the other night, but it seems that they definitively didn't pick up Bruce Irvin's option. But since we've been on air, the Houston Texans have extended Whitney Merciless to a 4-year deal instead of giving him the 5th-year option. Do you think that's what they're trying to get done with Bruce? Instead of giving him the 5th year, just re-sign him anyway?
Yeah, that's the hope over here. I mean, really talented kid, Bruce Irvin. He may not be very social media savvy because he's been going off on Twitter, and it's just been kind of ridiculous how he. But the talent is there. We went early on in the draft with him, and so you'd want him to stick around more than the few years he's been here. So I hope that's what's going on.
Ryder?
It would depend on how much we can keep him for. I mean,
the money, if we'd have picked him up on the option, I think it was $7.5 to $8 million for the year, where Merciless's deal is around 6.5 per, which is that sounds about right for Bruce Irvin, I think.
Yeah, that's what I would expect. I mean, that's a good deal for him. I think he's worth, 6.5 to $7.5 million. He's become a really good player with lots of potential to move around between the linebacker spot and Leo, but it just doesn't seem like we're going to have the money to keep him at this point with Russell Wilson's contract. I'd say best case scenario is that we probably end up trading him and getting something out of him.
Yeah, well, the trade option was something which Schneider seemed to quash a little bit on Brock and Stolk earlier today. It was something which they said they spoke about on Friday when they spoke to Bruce at VMAC, when they sat down with him and explained to him what their thinking was. That once the draft was out of the way, they would revisit the subject, which is, I guess, what they're doing right now. So we could know the future of Bruce Irvin in the next few days, the next few weeks, for definite, I think. And if they do what Houston have done with Merciless, I mean, I haven't watched much Houston or Whitney Merciless, so I don't know how effective or how big he has been for them. But he was selected before Bruce, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if he gets around 6.5 million if he gets around 6.5 million for 4 years, 4 or 5 years, well, 4 years seems to be their way of business, doesn't it? With most of the extensions they've done. So yeah, I'll be on board with that because it means it's affordable and we keep Bruce Irvin around for when he reaches his ceiling, most likely, because I don't think he's anywhere near it as of yet.
I would agree.
Well, one other thing, Chris Matthews, in the post-draft press conference they did, Pete Carroll seemed quite passionate about the fact that I think his words were that he's their big guy on the outside. One, are you surprised that he's gone from not being on the 53 for some parts of last season to being someone who seems to be top 3, top 4 on the wide receiver depth chart? And 2, are you excited about what he could bring after his Super Bowl performance? Ryder?
Well, I'm actually not all that surprised. I read up on him a little bit before last season, and he struck a couple people as a possible sleeper. And I mean, obviously he ended up being released at first, then he was brought back, and maybe that Super Bowl impact was bigger than expected for his first game, really. But it sounded like there are some people who thought he had the potential for it.
Yeah, I mean, because I think he was quite heavily recruited, I think, maybe, out of high school as well, maybe. But it's CFL, he tore it up in CFL for the time he was there. Ken, your thoughts?
Yeah, he definitely seemed like a sleeper this year. And since there aren't really a ton of guys on our roster that are like him, I don't really I'm not really surprised by this sudden jump in how we regard him. But
No.
he came up big in some big situations in the Super Bowl, and that's where you really have to show your stuff. So I'm incredibly excited. If he gets a full summer workout of being with the first team and seeing what he can do, I'm ecstatic of what he can do outside.
Yeah, well, like you said, there's not many. There's none. I think they're all 6 foot. I think, apart from Jimmy Graham, apart from the tight ends, but there is no one like with Marshall Lynch in a different sense. There's no one like Chris Matthews in the building, I don't think, unless they've snuck someone in under everyone's radar. I suppose. Going back to the centre position, do you think? I think Chris Myers is still out there. Do you think they go with Sekoli, Lewis, and Jean-Pierre? Do you think they try and bring that veteran in just for a year to give Sekoli time to learn the position? Ken?
I don't know. Since we're still dealing with guys in-house, I think we might be done with the outside realm. Bringing in like the steady Jean-Pierre and letting Sekoli, try and get his feet wet with the position, I think we should be able to hold out at least decently.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we picked up a veteran presence. It would probably say a lot. Well, it'd say a lot for Jean-Pierre and Lewis probably if we do, because they seemed legitimately excited about what Sekoli could do. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised either way if they picked one up or they just stood pat and went with those three in the position, battling out in the camp. And we all remember the last time 3 players battled it out for one spot on a roster after a draft. We got Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
That worked out all right, I suppose.
I think so.
Ryder, what were your other thoughts, just briefly, about like other teams' drafts?
Well,
who do you think won the draft, as it were?
For me, the Ravens and the Bucks, I really liked what they did.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, obviously they got the quarterback and they protect him a little bit, and obviously they probably drafted his weapons last year with Safarian Jenkins and Evans, didn't they? So yeah. Ken?
I like those teams. I'd also add the Titans to the mix with Mariota, DGB, and David Cobb, who's perfect for Wisenhunt's classic, I-form kind of system. So I think the Titans did a really solid job too, especially early.
Yeah, I think outside of those two, I really liked what the Falcons did. I think that obviously I followed it more keenly than I probably would have in past years because of Dan Quinn now. But yeah, getting Vic Beasley at 8 was, if Fowler was gone, he was the guy they would want, because I think he's perfect for what Dan Quinn's probably going to ask him to do, how he's going to set them up. Jalen Collins is someone I absolutely loved for Seattle at 31 when that existed. So at probably 40 or whatever point of the draft that is is fantastic. He's raw, but opposite Desmond Trufant and Alfred around and the safeties they've got there now is impressive. I'm with Grady Jarrett as well in the 4th or 5th, wherever they drafted him. I think one, it was value, and again, it's just perfect for the defense they run in Atlanta. So I think Atlanta probably had, on paper obviously, probably had my favourite and strongest draft of the 32.
Yeah, it's a good call, Stuart.
We'll go back to Seahawks just briefly. So what would you, looking at the 8 draft picks and the 12 or so, how would you draft this year's draft for the Seahawks? Ryder?
What would I grade it?
Yeah.
I always try to advocate for 3 years before grading a class, and I think that the Seahawks are a team that can't be said enough about, just because the players, so many of them are surprises, and guys you don't really have on your radar. So I'm going to give a tentative B, just because I think there are going to be some real surprises in the draft. I think it'll be another good draft for us, but at the same time, there are some guys that I really question whether or not they even make the roster or even really play in the NFL.
Yeah. Ken?
I'm going to go ahead and give an A-. They addressed all the needs that were on paper really well. They got guys who were prototypical and ideal Seahawkian kind of guys. Really Tyler Lockett and Mark Lewinsky, and really warming to Terry Poole as well. Seems like a very solid guard type. And then everyone else, they'll fill a role in some way. And I think maybe the minus is just because I'm still not really feeling good about Frank Clark, just with everything surrounding him. But the Seahawks did a great job addressing all their needs. A-.
Yeah, I think somewhere between A and B. I think to be honest, I'm used to D's and F's from him, so it's a bit unsettling. But yeah, I think they hit all their needs. Frank Clark was the toughest one, but you watch him and you look at him as well, and it fits. Lockett, I absolutely love the Lockett pick at that point. Paul is someone I like. Glowinski as well. Smith fits, but I think he needs to bulk up a little bit. Apparently he played at college at 180, so that's not going to probably fly in Seattle. But yes, I'll probably go for A- as well. I think, look, because they hit. If you'd have said on Thursday morning what the Seahawks need to do in the draft, I think they did that. They improved their pass rush. They definitely improved their O-line, obviously by numbers more than anything. They added to the defensive backfield, and they got their kick returner, which is something we haven't had consistently since probably Golden Tate left, because obviously we had Harvin for a cup of coffee in the Super Bowl. But yeah, I think A- is probably a fair, and I'm really interested to see if any of these in drafting latch on, because if you do, then they're obviously doing something right with the amount of talent that's already on the last year's 53 and the players they picked up in the off season. The very few they did. What do you think is next for Seattle in the off season? Obviously, minicamp, rookie minicamps this week. Ryder?
As far as what happens next in the offseason, they're probably going to bring in a couple veterans. Some of them will be younger, but I think there will also be a couple of the older guys. But I'm not sure how many of them make the roster. But that being said, I think like we've gotten O'Brien, Schofield in the offseason in a similar manner in the past. I think there'll probably be one or two guys like him making the roster that are veterans.
Yeah. Which of the 8 would you put as? Sorry, Ken, your thoughts? Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'm not really envisioning us doing anything really major, so maybe like Ryder, maybe 1 or 2. But as for me, I'm pretty content with what we have right now. So I'm just ready to get these guys into camp and see them progress and see how the 53-man sits at the end of the summer.
Yeah. What's your what? Go to you, Ken, first. Are you worried at all about the delay with Wilson? Well, the perceived delay with Wilson.
Not really. I mean, I would love a deal to be done sooner rather than later, of course. But I think Russell Wilson's a classy guy. John Schneider and Pete Carroll are doing what's best for the organization, making sure they can actually keep a team around him. And it's such a momentous contract because it could set a precedent for future years. And obviously, you want him around, but you gotta keep the context of the team in mind. So it's a big negotiation you got to go through. for a guy like Wilson. So it doesn't surprise me that it hasn't happened yet, but I think it's still too soon to worry about it.
Yeah, yeah, I'd probably agree with that. Ryder?
Yeah, I think they at this point they should just keep taking their time. I think it'll stay on a pretty friendly level. I wouldn't say there's any cause for concern until it starts getting to be close to the preseason, sometime. I wouldn't worry about it unless it starts getting into like mid or late July.
Yeah, I think if it happens, before they get together for workouts and stuff, like everyone, all 90 of them, I think that's when. But I think it just sounds like it's close. I was surprised it wasn't done before the draft because I think that's their usual tax. But I think it's coming. I think Irvin. Seeing that Houston have done this with Merciless probably sets the precedent to do it with Irvin as well. And if we sign him down for like I said earlier, 4 more years, I think that could be done before Wilson at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if it was done first. And then also we got Wagner and maybe Sweezy later in the season as well. But do you think the Sweezy deal might depend on how Glowinski and Poole transition, or do you think it's someone they love and want to keep around? Ryder?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a matter of how the new guys develop. Because Sweezy, he's really developed after transitioning, and we've seen what other offensive linemen coming out of this system have gotten from other teams. So it wouldn't be a surprise if we ended up having to let him go.
No, like we said earlier with Poole and Glowinski, he is a concave guy. He's like the archetypal guy. He's who they probably hoped. It's probably who Cable hoped Robert Gallery would probably be over the other side at left guard. But I think Poole and Glowinski are going to have to do what Wilson did probably, and just off through them even to consider letting Sweezy go at this point. I think. Ken, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that, Stuart. I mean, like I said earlier, Glowinski's kind of like a mirror image of Sweezy. So if he really impresses, and they get a gauge for what the market's going to be like for Sweezy, then they might be a little less hesitant to let him go. But he is a Tom Cable success story and great conversion. I mean, Sicoli's going to follow in his footsteps basically, so they want to keep that guy around.
Yeah. I'm just reading up on another one to go back even further. Just reading up on one of the undrafted kids they got, Trevon Reed out of Auburn, a cornerback. Apparently, he was a 5-star recruit out of high school, and he only started playing cornerback in his senior year after he fell down the receiver depth chart. So that sounds familiar.
Sure does.
So it's a bigger hill to climb than Sherman had probably from the 5th round, but that'd be another name to keep an eye out. Apparently he went 1-on-1 against Lockett in their college game and restricted him to under 50 yards receiving. So maybe that's how they come across him, because he wasn't a name I'd heard of.
Okay.
But yeah. Anything else you want to cover, either of you? Any other questions or subjects?
I think we did it all here.
Right
Yeah.
up? Cool.
I think we got it.
Cool. Well, I'd just like to thank you both for the work over the weekend and all the draft coverage over the last few months. It's been pretty good. I know people who run the site and run Charles, who does the NFC West stuff, has been really impressed with the work we've churned out. Obviously, for a few weeks with the help of Mark as well. So I'd just like to thank you both and hopefully we'll continue it over the summer. And hopefully Wilson and Wagner and everyone else will give us loads to write about. Hopefully have loads of good news to write over the summer. But yeah, that's it for the Pro Football Spot Seahawks, drafting Seahawks for 2015. Like again, so let's thank Ken and Ryder for joining me over the weekend and over the last few weeks. Just keep checking up on the website. There'll be more stuff coming in the week. But yeah, signing off. Thank you very much, lads.
See you, Stuart. All right.
See you later.